and welcome to our newscast. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. North Korea watchers at both home and abroad are keeping their eyes on the New Year exchanges between Seoul and Pyongyang. The most attention is being directed to whether the leaders of South and North Korea will be able to sit down face to face in 2015. For our top story, here's Hwang Sung-hee.
Under the right mood and conditions, there is no reason for us to hold back from the highest level talks. We will put our utmost efforts for practical progress in dialogue and negotiations.
The South Korean government hopes to hold any form of inter-Korean talks in the near future.
The two Koreas kicked off the new year by expressing their willingness for inter-Korean dialogue. But what's the chance of them getting back to the negotiating table? Kim Jong-un's apparent summit offer is his first since he took power in 2011, but it comes with strings attached. Seoul must halt its annual military exercises with Washington. North Korea has always protested the drills, which take place between February and March. South Korea says it has no plans to cancel the exercises this year. Kim also stressed Pyongyang will not give up its nuclear program, pledging to stick to the so-called Pyeongjin policy, or the dual development of nuclear arms and the economy. Still, analysts say the North Korean leader has shown a strong determination to talk with the South, and they expect the regime to propose various forms of dialogue. This as Kim seeks to end Pyongyang's diplomatic isolation by reaching a breakthrough with Seoul. President Park will also want to make some progress with the North in her third year in office. But analysts say South Korea must first test North Korea's sincerity before jumping back into talks. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
While the U.S. government says it supports better inter-Korean ties, there's a skepticism among American experts over Kim Jong-un's possible summit offer. They are telling policymakers in Seoul and Washington to take the young leader's words with a grain of salt. For more, here's Kim Young-gil.
U.S. experts have cautioned against getting too carried away with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's address, in which he called for a major shift in inter-Korean ties. They question his sincerity as Kim made clear that Pyongyang has no intention of backing away from its nuclear ambitions. U.S. pundits say that Seoul and Washington will only come back to the negotiating table if North Korea shows a willingness to denuclearize. The Brookings Institution, a conservative U.S. think tank, says Seoul and Washington should be cautious when yielding to any new demands or when trying to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table, as it could entail excessive costs. The Center for Strategic and International Studies says it's too early to evaluate Pyongyang's stance and that South Korea should wait for possible talks with the North in January. Some U.S. experts say Pyongyang is trying to deflect the international community's concerns about its human rights problems by issuing conciliatory gestures to South Korea. Diplomatic sources in Washington say a willingness from North Korea to dismantle its nuclear program must come before talks, but added the recent Sony Pictures hacking will negatively affect the issue. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, a New Year's greeting ceremony is currently underway at the presidential office here in South Korea. Attention is being drawn to whether President Park will give a response to North Korea's mention of an inter-Korean summit. This as the president had expressed her determination to improve Seoul's relations with Pyongyang during her New Year's address on Wednesday. Some 200 figures, including the Prime Minister, the National Assembly Speaker, and senior lawmakers from the rival parties, are attending today's meeting. The president is also expected to call for support for her three-year economic innovation plan and other key policy initiatives for the new year. And there's another event from the presidential office to look out for. It's President Park's New Year's press conference, speculated to take place in mid-January. Watchers say the president will again focus on ways to revitalize the economy. Son Jung-in reports.
The presidential office is making its final preparation for the upcoming New Year's press conference by President Park Geun-hye. The format is expected to be similar to last year, so she will likely first lay out her plans and policy directions for 2015 before answering questions from reporters. Considering the circumstances at the National Assembly, the conference is expected to take place around January 12th. President Park will likely express her strong will to revitalize the economy through innovation and regulatory reforms. She is also forecast to focus on the current status of reform in sectors related to labor, finance, pensions, and public institutions.
깨끗하고 안전하고 신뢰할 수 있는 사회로 나아가기 위해 오랫동안 쌓여온 적폐를 해소하는 일도 흔들림 없이 추진할 것입니다.
With this year marking the 70th anniversary of the nation's independence from Japan's colonial rule, she will also address peace on the Korean peninsula by trying to speed up the process of reunification and normalizing inter-Korean relations. In regards to the recent allegations that one of her former aides meddled in state affairs, some pundits say she will put the accusations aside since she already said they were unfounded rumors. Others, however, say the president may use the opportunity to demonstrate her will to shake up her inner circle of aides. 손정인, ARIRANG News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Authorities in China have launched an investigation into Chinese IP addresses that are believed to be the source of the recent hacking attack on South Korea's nuclear plant operator. This comes after the Korean government asked relevant agencies in China to help identify the possible culprits behind the attack. The addresses were located in the northeastern Chinese city of Shenyang. That's where North Korean hackers are widely thought to operate from. It's still not clear who was behind the hack that leaked the personal data of employees at South Korea's nuclear agency, as well as blueprints of nuclear reactors. Korean officials may be dispatched to Shenyang if China confirms the hack attack was indeed launched from the city. China's leader, in the meantime, has ordered a probe into the stampede that claimed nearly 40 lives on New Year's Eve in Shanghai. The exact cause has not been identified, but local police do say that it wasn't because of some fake money thrown from a nearby nightclub. Kim Min-ji tells us more.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered a probe into a stampede that killed dozens in Shanghai on New Year's Eve. The incident happened about 25 minutes before midnight in the city's Bund district, where thousands of people had gathered to count down to the new year. At least 36 people, many of them students, were killed and dozens more were injured. President Xi has called for all-out efforts to attend to those affected while ordering local governments around the country to make sure such accidents do not happen again. The investigation will likely focus on whether there were enough police officers to control the huge crowds. Chinese media reports that nearly 300,000 turned up in Shanghai for celebrations last year. The injured, many of which have been hospitalized, recalled the accident.
I was hanging around the Bund district when it happened. I remember standing on a step and then passing out all of a sudden. When I woke up, I was lying on the ground.
There was a woman next to me who had been helping me all the way. She told me not to fall down. I guess I would have died if I had fallen down.
Shanghai police denied social media reports that the stampede was triggered by people trying to pick up fake cash dropped from the balcony of a nearby nightclub. Police say the bills were thrown after the stampede took place. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
A funeral has been held for the first victim identified from the AirAsia flight that crashed into the Java Sea 6 days ago. The body of a 49-year-old passenger was handed over to her family on Thursday at a ceremony in the Indonesian city of Surabaya. 10 bodies have reportedly been recovered so far, but bad weather continues to hamper the search for the victims and the plane's black box. It's unclear what brought down the plane with 160 62 passengers on board. Citing investigators, Reuters reports that the pilot may have climbed above the clouds too steeply while trying to avoid a storm. 2014 was a torrid year for Syria as it lost more than 76,000 people to its civil war. The worst part is that though the killings are expected to continue this year as strikes by the Islamic State militants and sectarian violence in Iraq show little sign of easing. Connie Kim has this story.
2014 was the deadliest year in the 4-year-long Syrian civil war. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says more than 76,000 people were killed in the nation last year. And more than 17,000 of that total were civilians, including 3,500 children. The civil war, which started as an uprising against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, has now become a multi-front conflict, one that opened the door for the rise of the Islamic State militant group. The loss of life, however, isn't expected to decline anytime soon. 17 U.S.-led airstrikes were carried out on Thursday on IS-controlled buildings in the Syrian cities of Raqqa and Kobani. And marking the new year, Syrian President Assad made a rare visit to the front lines of the war in Jobar, east of Damascus. He visited government troops there to encourage them in their fight. Jobar is a former rebel stronghold, and the Syrian government has been trying to oust insurgents from the city in recent months. More than 200,000 people have been injured or killed since the Syrian conflict broke out in March 2011, and nearly half of the nation's population has been displaced. 3.2 million people have fled to the neighboring countries seeking asylum. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Egypt's highest court has accepted an appeal request and ordered a retrial in the case of 3 jailed Al Jazeera journalists. Peter Gresti, Mohammed Fadel Fahmy, and Bahar Mohammed have been put behind bars for more than a year now on charges that they spread false news in support of the Muslim Brotherhood. They had been handed prison sentences of between 7 to 10 years back in June for their alleged crimes. Al Jazeera has called for the prompt release of the journalists, saying they were simply reporting the news. The number one priority for Korean Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan this year remains to be pushing for structural reforms. He says without those changes, the Korean economy will face disastrous consequences. For this story, here's Hwang Ji-hye.
Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has pledged to do his best to push through structural reforms that he says are not only critical for the Korean economy, but inevitable. In his New Year's address, he said Korea would fail to create more jobs and provide more welfare benefits without the reforms. He added the government will not ignore the fact that younger, unemployed people believe they're not needed, that 1 out of every 3 employees is a temporary worker, and that retired baby boomers are rushing to open small businesses in sectors that are already highly competitive. Choi said the problems stem from structural issues in the economy like an inflexible labor market, an imbalance between exports and domestic demand, a shrinking workforce due to the aging population and low birth rates, and the decreased competitiveness of major manufacturers. Choi also said the Korean economy could also struggle just as the Eurozone and Japanese economies have if the government fails to meet its reform goals. In his overall evaluation of last year, the finance minister said the domestic economy managed to lay the foundation for structural reforms through aggressive expansionary policies. He added that Korea also received better sovereign ratings than Japan while expanding its free trade reach into countries like China. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors have set their global sales target for the new year at 8.2 million cars, which would represent the weakest pace of sales growth since 2003. Hyundai Motor Group Chairman Chung Mong-gu in his New Year's speech said the company will raise its brand awareness overseas in 2015 by producing quality green cars and increasing the localization of its products. As for the conservative target, analysts point to unfavorable currency conditions, the strengthening of the Korean won against the Japanese yen, and the slow global recovery as prominent risks. Now, there were many changes implemented as the year ticked over to 2015, the most notable being the price hike of cigarettes. ARIRANG News' Kim Hyun-bin looks into some of the changes, including the expansion of welfare benefits for those in most need. Take a look.
It hasn't been a good start to the year for smokers in the nation, as the price of a pack jumped on New Year's Day. The first tobacco price hike in a decade saw prices rise by around $1.80. The average cost of a pack of cigarettes now stands at over $4. And it doesn't stop there. Smoking is now completely banned in all restaurants nationwide. People caught lighting up in prohibited zones could be slapped with a fine of up to $90. These measures were unveiled by the government in September in an attempt to reduce the country's high smoking rate. There are other governmental changes too. From the start of the new year, families facing severe financial hardships will receive more help from the government, as it has expanded the scope of people who can apply for welfare benefits. This includes a stronger safety net for families in the low-income bracket. The changes were proposed after a mother and her two daughters committed suicide in February because of financial troubles. Korea has also upped efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions. The government is making local companies follow a trading scheme which requires businesses to reduce emissions or buy credits if they have difficulty meeting the targets. They'll be subject to emission restrictions from 2015 through 2017. The aggregate emission quota for more than 500 businesses has been set at nearly 1.6 billion tons over the next 3 years. On the tourism front, tourists will now be able to make use of a clearer and more convenient standard to help them select a suitable hotel. The tourism ministry has adopted the internationally recognized 5-star rating system. The move comes as Korea aims to better inform the 14 million foreign tourists that visit the country each year. Since 1999, hotel ratings in Korea have been voluntary and self-determined, garnering criticism and consumer complaints for being inconsistent and often inflated. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And going back to the cigarette price hike, the government says it aims to bring down the nation's smoking rate with the higher prices coupled with more areas being designated as non-smoking zones. Kwon So-ah has this report.
Where there was once a variety of cigarette brands of different styles and flavors, the shelves at many convenience stores stand stripped bare. This, as smokers were busy grabbing as many cigarette packs as they could before the price nearly doubled on New Year's Day. This scramble shows that most smokers in Korea are not planning on kicking the habit, as it is the government's plan. While some question whether the newly inflated prices will have a long-term effect on habitual smokers, many researchers believe the policy will encourage people to stop out smoking.
General scientific evidence shows that for every 10% price hike, the smoking rate drops by around 4%. And since the government has followed through with other anti-smoking policies as well, I expect the number of smokers to decrease.
Those other policies are to do with where smokers can light up. Smoking is now banned in all restaurants, cafes, and bars regardless of their size. In cafes, chairs and tables have disappeared from smoking areas, meaning customers will be allowed to smoke in a designated zone, but they will not be allowed to eat or drink while doing so.
Smokers say they pay their taxes and the high cigarette prices and that this is too much. Some just leave without buying a coffee.
Even though they do not contain tobacco and are usually odorless, electronic cigarettes are also subject to the ban. Although the new rules came into effect on January 1st, there will be a grace period of 3 months, giving smokers and businesses time to adapt. For smokers, they'll be left with a simple choice: put up with the strict new rules or stop once and for all. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Koreans are looking forward to what's in store for 2015, also known as the Year of the Sheep in the zodiac calendar. Im Yoon-hee reports on how sheep are getting ready to make the most of their time in the spotlight. Have a look.
The sheep at this zoo have gone all out, dressed up in cute rainbow-striped clothes. Wearing embroidered hairbands and even pink blush on their cheeks, they're ready to meet the visitors, who came to see them to mark the Year of the Sheep. They move through the fence at the sound of the bell. Some kids get scared and walk backward out of fear, while others can't take their hands off their plump wool.
The sheep feels very soft and nice. I have clothes made of wool, but it feels a lot different touching it with my own hands.
The animal is recognized as a source of kindness, humility, and respect for parents, as seen from a young sheep that kneels down for their mother's milk.
Sheep are very smart. They can recognize their names and their keeper's voice. I feel proud when they hear me calling them and follow me.
It's hoped that the Year of the Sheep will be calmer than 2014 and bring peaceful and compassionate time, like the spirit the animal symbolizes. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. We woke up to brisk cold conditions nationwide, and a snowy morning was greeting those on the west coast. And more flurries are falling in parts of both Jeollado provinces, where over 21 centimeters of heavy snowfall has been recorded. At the moment, it's about -3 degrees here in the capital, but wind chills are pulling down sensory temperatures, making it feel about -10 degrees. So make sure to gear up for the cold when heading outdoors. Other than that, dry weather advisories continue to be in effect along the eastern coastline, and humidity levels in parts of Gangwon-do province are down to 19%. So make sure to be on the lookout for starting fires as strong winds are blowing in those regions. Other than that, it looks like on a Saturday morning, temperatures will dip to -8, but the cold snap will begin to ease up by tomorrow afternoon, and the daytime high should peak at 8 degrees on Sunday. On to the readings. Seoul will mix it to -1, Daegu hits 2, Busan reaches 5. On to other regions. Jeju gets up to 8, Dokdo hits -1, Kumgang remains colder at -6. Those are the updates I have for you now. Be careful on the roads as it may be icy, and here's a look at the international weather. And that's it from us at this hour. From me and the rest of the team, thanks very much for staying with us. More updates coming up at 6 p.m. Korea time. Do join us again then.
Yeah. This is Daniel Che. Welcome to the headlines for this hour. Kim Jong-un is expressing willingness, in some degree eagerness, to hold the inter-Korean. Hello, this is Daniel Che. These are the headlines for the hour. For the first time since taking power, Kim Jong-un makes an apparent offer for summit talks with the South. But it comes with preconditions, and U.S. experts remain skeptical over the regime's motives. In a New Year's meeting with top officials, President Park Geun-hye expresses her determination to improve inter-Korean ties and calls for support for key policy initiatives. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan again emphasizes the need for structural reforms. He warns without them, Korea could face disastrous consequences. China is still looking into the Shanghai New Year stampede that took 36 lives. Local government across the country are reviewing plans for upcoming public events to prevent similar disasters. We have more at 6 p.m. Korea time. Join us then.